Hello and thanks for joining us on the news on NTA International. I am Dennis Adegunloye. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Pope Francis and AU Commission condemn Uganda school attack. Amid political crisis, Malians vote to enact a new constitution. And Nigerian Christians join counterparts the world over to mark 2023 Father's Day. Pope Francis on Sunday condemned this week's brutal attack on a Ugandan school where 41, mostly students, victims were hacked, shot and burned to death, and others unaccounted for. The pontiff prayed for the young students, victims of the brutal attack, during his weekly Angelus prayer at St. Peter's Square in the Vatican City. Meanwhile, chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, strongly condemns the heinous and shocking terrorist attack by suspected allied democratic forces, militia, that targeted a secondary school in western Uganda near the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo that left at least 42 students dead, more injured, and several unaccounted for. The chairperson expresses his sincere condolences to the loved ones of the victims and wishes a full recovery to the injured students. He reiterates the need for an urgent, holistic regional approach to addressing the threats posed by all terrorist and armed groups operating from the Democratic Republic of Congo to ensure regional security. The chairperson wishes to reaffirm the African Union's continued and unwavering solidarity with the Ugandan government and people during this painful period of national loss. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, has hosted the Governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Zulum, in Geneva, Switzerland, for discussions over the resettlement of internally displaced persons and their livelihoods. The meeting focused on IDP solution plans, with specifics on government leadership, community-driven approach, and voluntary return, relocation, and integration. As part of the meeting, Secretary General of the United Nations expressed his desire for the UN to adopt Borno State's successful humanitarian model. This was disclosed at a meeting hosted by the Centre International, the conference CICH, hosted by the Office of the Special Advisor, William Chemali. The Borno model is a non-kinetic approach aimed at handling counterinsurgency efforts and addressing humanitarian crises for over 1 decade. Governor Zulum at the meeting highlighted the successes achieved in Borno State through the implementation of his administration's novel approach to the humanitarian situation tagged Borno Model. Zulum had previously attended a breakfast strategic country update on northeast Nigeria, organized and hosted by the famous Graduate Institute, University of Geneva. The governor engaged over 20 academics, humanitarian, peace, security and development actors, think tanks, and researchers analyzing Borno's practical experiences of the Boko Haram crisis and how the non-kinetic approaches yield results. The UNDP resident representative in Nigeria, Mohammed Yahya, spoke while the Nigerian ambassador to Geneva also made presentations on Nigeria's stand. On the trail of an enduring redress to issues bedeviling the nation, the junta in Mali vows to let the people decide the way to go to arrive at peaceful growth and sustainable development through a referendum pushed for a vote on Sunday to change the constitution. Kolo Mohammed tells us more.
Ballots opened Sunday in Mali as the West African nation held a referendum on the governing junta's new constitution. Some 8.4 million citizens are eligible to vote yes or no on the draft constitution in the first electoral test for the leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, who has vowed to lead the country back to civilian rule in 2024. Malians are voting to pass judgment on the governing junta's constitution, which has fueled speculations that the country's strongman will seek election. The vote is the first organized by the military since it seized power in August 2020 of a country gripped for years by a political, security, and economic crisis. Analysts opine that with the problems largely unresolved, the vote could be disrupted. It is a checkpoint on the road to a return of civilian rule in March 2024 under commitments made by the military itself. But less than 9 months before the deadline, Mali has no clarity on the future role of the military, including junta leader Colonel Assimi Goïta. The reform has drawn a wide-range opposition from former rebels and imams to political opponents. Influential religious organizations oppose the continuation of secularism enshrined in the current constitution. In the north, former rebels who, unlike the jihadists, signed a major peace deal with the state also rejected. Spokesman for the Party for National Rebirth, Perena, described a personalization of power, a personality called. Kolo Muhammad, NTA News.
Now, to discuss Mali's voting in a referendum to change its constitution is a legal practitioner, come international affairs analyst in person of Victor Patola. You're very welcome to NTA International Studios.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Malians vote in a referendum to change their constitution with results needed in about 72 hours. What do you see as the intendments of this exercise?
First of all, we have to put into consideration the peculiarity of Mali currently, judging from the successful coup it has had and the various factors that are involved towards this pending constitutional issue. So the fact that there is a time limit to which the result will be out is actually a very good thing. It will reduce the weight and the rate at which certain vagaries can come in to influence the decision of the people for or against this constitutional referendum.
All right, certain provisions in the proposed amendments are being criticized by former rebels, imams, and opponents. Can there be a middle course to evolve a constitution that will serve the general interests of Malians?
Definitely, there has to be a middle ground. Now, when we are looking at situations such as this, apart from the fact that, which is a good thing, apart from the fact that the elite, the Malian elites have decided the way forward is a constitutional referendum, then a new constitution which will lead to a more democratic settings. Apart from that, another important way in which there will be a middle ground to this whole thing is grand coalition. Once there's a grand coalition, once the parties involved, can come together and decide this is the way forward, then there can be a middle ground. But we have to put into consideration that the present military junta will want, in one way or the other, to perpetuate itself in office, or look for one or two ways to favor itself in the coming election slated for next year. So the fears of the other parties, of the other groups, is actually founded. But what is important is that there should be a grand coalition of interest. There cannot, in situations such as this, an interest cannot take paramount reign. There has to be give and take here and there between the parties involved. So definitely what will be in favor, what the penultimate what will be in favor of majority of Malians will be if there's a middle ground, and that middle ground is what is suitable for all parties involved.
Okay, and under the United Nations Protocol, fundamental rights are expected to be universal rights. Do you see this playing out in the proposed Mali constitution?
It is fundamental, it is crucial, it is germane that fundamental human right is contained in that constitution, because by the transition into a constitutionally into a constitutional regime, the toga of the military toga will be shed off, into a constitutional setting. So one of the important ways with which a military setting is differentiated from a democratic setting is the inclusion of fundamental human rights of individuals in that particular constitution. So it is very, very important. As a matter of fact, one of the ways in which the international community will be able to adjudge this constitution as favorable, as shedding the toga of military regime or junta, will be the inclusion of fundamental human rights. And even beyond that, not only the inclusion of fundamental human rights, but the observance of these fundamental human rights.
Right, and just on a final note, this referendum, how optimistic are you that in the grand scheme of things, in the long run, we're going to see an eventual return to democratic rule in Mali?
We have to look at, because there are some parties who are actually against the referendum. There are some that are in support of the referendum. Personally, I believe that this referendum should usher the country into a democratic settings, into a, this pending constitutional, to see the fruitfulness of this next year constitutional, to usher them into a constitutional regime, actually. So I'm more optimistic that positive, it will come out very, very positive. What is very important is the decision, is the unfettered decision of the people of Mali. What is important is that the referendum process is not influenced in any way, that it represents the true decision of the Malian people.
All right. Victor Patola, legal practitioner and international affairs analyst, many thanks for taking the time to share your perspective with us. Thank you very much. Now, African leaders on a peace mission to find an enduring peaceful solution to the war in Ukraine by Russia arrived in Moscow to meet with President Putin. Just as latest truce reached in Sudan is for 72 hours, designed to calm over 2 months of fierce battling between the army in Sudan and paramilitary support forces. Kolo Mohammed tells us more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised the balanced approach of African countries towards the Ukraine conflict ahead of formal talks with a delegation aiming to push for peace between Kiev and Moscow. President Putin expressed his respect for the African delegation's principled position, but insists that Moscow's Ukraine offensive is irreproachable from the point of view of international law, adding that Kiev's refusal to negotiate is responsible for the conflict's prolongation. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa told Putin that this war must be settled, bringing the voice of a continent that has badly suffered from the economic repercussions of the fighting in Ukraine.
We are here to communicate a very clear message that we would like this war to be ended. We say so because this war is having a negative impact on the African continent and indeed on many other countries around the world. As a continent, we are being negatively affected in terms of our economies.
Back in Kiev, the African Peace Mission met President Zelensky, who opined that for negotiations towards peace to start, Moscow and its forces should first exit Ukrainian soil from all fronts. In the meantime, the start of a 72-hour ceasefire aimed at calming more than 2 months of conflict between rival Sudanese military factions brought a lull in clashes in Khartoum early on Sunday, following battles and airstrikes overnight. Sudan's army and the rival Rapid Support Forces RSF have agreed to refrain from attacks and from seeking military advantage during the ceasefire period, which started at 6 a.m. on Sunday, as well as allowing for delivery of aid. Saudi and U.S. mediators said several previous truces have failed to stop the fighting. These have resulted in deep destruction and heavy loss of lives, means of livelihoods, and infrastructure. The over 2 months of brutal war has led many citizens to flee, vacate living abodes that are either destroyed or too dangerous to continue to habitate. For some, Becoming strangers in foreign lands turned out the only safe destination. For many others, dangerous border crossings is a safe relief where the homeland remains unreachable. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
And Kolo Mohammed reports that United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken arrives China on a state visit, describing global analysts as rare, deep and professional.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken began talks in China on Sunday on the highest level trip by a U.S. official in nearly 5 years, as the two powers look to notch down the temperature in an escalating rivalry. Both sides have voiced guarded hope of improving communication and preventing conflict with the world's two largest economies at odds on an array of issues, from trade to technology and regional security. Blinken and his aides opened the two-day visit by meeting Foreign Minister King Gang at an ornately decorated city villa in Beijing's Asian Diaoyutai Gardens, where the Chinese host will later throw a banquet dinner. King and Blinken walked along a red carpet and shook hands next to a pair of national flags, standing in front of a painting of craggy mountains and wispy clouds. Blinken earlier said he will seek to avoid miscalculation and to responsibly manage relations with a country identified by U.S. policymakers across party lines as the greatest challenge to Washington's global promise. He was originally scheduled to visit in February, but abruptly scrapped his plans as the United States protested and later shut down what is said was a Chinese spy balloon flying over its soil. The United States and China are at odds over a slew of issues, including trade, technology, and Taiwan. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
You're on to the News 90 International. Do stay with us. More reports after this timeout. Thanks for staying with us. Men have been urged to embrace the essential roles of fatherhood in order to strengthen the society. This is the message that resonated in many churches as fathers observed their day. Omenka Amarachuku captured the celebration in various churches in Abuja.
That song, Rise Up, O Men of God, is a reminder to men on their fatherly roles in nation building. Most Reverend Michael Akiwale, the Metropolitan Archbishop of Abuja, used the occasion to remind fathers on their duties at home.
We as fathers, we have the responsibility of laying a solid foundation for our children.
We pray that this year's Father's Day will manifest the grace of God in the lives of every father.
We should return back to God, who is the architect of every one of us.
At the Transfiguration Anglican Church, Reverend Canon Nelson Akiwade admonished men to see the good of creation and all that God have given to them.
All our fathers, from the president to everyone in the country, we live exemplary life that will make positive impacts in the society.
In a home that there is no father, automatically that home is not complete. So we have to do all we can to make sure that we live for our families.
A father is somebody who is a covering unto as many people as possible. So today is the day we celebrate these fathers for the work they have done in our lives.
God created man, in his own image. And as God is the head of all being, the fathers are supposed to be the head of human, especially their home.
The occasion is also to celebrate boys and the men's life achievement with the senior pastor, Reverend Tom Tokwere, to tell us more on the celebration of the day.
From our families, the nuclear family, we need to set the pace. We need to show the examples by the way we live, by the things we do, as to how one should be, how one should behave in a nation, and how one should work towards the progress and the growth of the nation.
The men also used the occasion to pray for the growth and unity of the nation. In Abuja, Umenka Marchuku, NTA News.
The saying, "Give honor to whom honor is due," manifested itself at the grand reception for the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, in Abuja. The SGF at the celebration restated his commitment to service to the fatherland.
Indeed, it was a night for the low, the high, and the mighty. For some dignitaries, the event is a roll call, and to say that every Nigerian tribe was represented is only but to state the obvious. A unique event in every sense of it, I must say, projecting unity in diversity, which has become the driving force for national development. The celebrant, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, flanked by wife and fellow compatriots, demonstrated a high sense of patriotism. However, choosing the right words to qualify the character and qualities of the man of the moment who is being described as a square peg in a square hole was quite a task.
We cherish Mr. President. We thank him for this honor. But we know the Akume that we grew with, that we worked with, is a Nigerian to the full.
One thing I know for certain, that this is the choice that will not disappoint Nigeria. We will work with you, partner with you, to ensure that all policies of government scale through in the House successfully.
We are celebrating two things tonight: excellence and humility. And we have no doubt that you are going to leave your mark in the present administration.
Your show of love and solidarity will never be in vain, because I am determined not to disappoint you. And with God on our side, we will never fail.
It was these words of a renewed hope that set the tone for merriment. There was enough to eat, drink, and go round.
In other news, investing in political parties is a sure way to giving Nigerians, especially politicians, the means to producing quality leadership for the masses. This is the submission by participants at a dialogue on politics, policy and governance held in Abuja. Timothy Yusuf reports.
Many gathered here believe that focus has been more since 1999 in terms of candidates for elections and thinking less about capacity to deliver quality leadership. This big ideas platform by the School of Politics, Policy and Governance is to facilitate the generation and sharing of fresh ideas, innovative solutions and implementation strategies to address Nigeria and Africa's plethora of challenges.
For us, it must be people-centered. What do we want to achieve? Improve service delivery, open government, facilitating development, reducing poverty, getting citizens to engage in government and getting government to respond.
Allowing political parties to clearly function and run its affairs democratically to deliver dividends of democracy, participants believe is the way to go. Political parties should also subject themselves to criticism when they are not doing enough in their role, the dialogue emphasized. Timothy Yusuf, NTA News.
Speaker House of Representatives Tajuddin Abbas has expressed grief over the boat mishap which claimed the lives of 104 people in Patigi local government area of Kwara State. In a condolence message signed by his special advisor on media and publicity, Musa Abdullahi Krishi, the speaker describes the incident as unfortunate and one too many. He called for all necessary action to be taken to prevent boat mishaps in the country. While commiserating with the government and people of Kwara State, the speaker prayed for the repose of the souls of those who lost their lives and quick recovery for those injured. And it's with that we conclude the news on NTA International at this time. Many thanks for watching. Do remember to join the NTA in the ongoing campaign against rape and rapists. I'm Dennis at Dibunloye. Thanks for watching.